Hello, everybody, and welcome in. We are excited to have you with us tonight. And we're also very excited to have Ascendis with us tonight to be able to share a few things that are going on in their organization and to just share some details about their organization altogether. So tonight, we're going to be keeping things pretty high level. We will be going through a presentation. I'm going to introduce who the speakers are. We'll go through the presentation. Then we're going to open up the chat so that we can get some questions to be able to be answered by Yen and Dr. Shu tonight. So we're really excited to have with us Yen Mikkelson. He is the president and CEO of Ascendis Pharma. Mr. Mikkelson founded Ascendis Pharma in 2007 and has served as the company's president, chief executive officer, and board member since then. He's a native of Denmark and a scientist by training. He held roles at several small to large biopharmaceutical companies prior to founding Ascendis. In 2021, Mr. Mikkelson was named chairman of the board of directors of Hummingbird Bioscience, a clinical stage biotechnology company focused on cancer and autoimmune disease. So we'll be excited to hear from him. We also have a familiar face with us, Dr. Aimee Shu, so we're glad to have her back this evening. She is the Vice President of Clinical Development, Endocrine Medical Sciences at Ascendis Pharma. Ascendis Pharma, a graduate of Harvard Medical School and a board certified in internal medicine, endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism. Dr. Shu is a practicing endocrinologist at Stanford Healthcare, where she treats patients with parathyroid imbalance, calcium imbalance, menstrual disorders, menopause, fractures, and osteoporosis. At Ascendis Pharma, Dr. Shu is a vice president of clinical development for the company's endocrine portfolio. So we have two experts on here to talk to us today. So I'm going to actually bring back Yen and ask you to go ahead and get started. We're glad to have you this evening. Thank you for your time.
First of all, thanks a lot for inviting me and Aimee. It's a pleasure for us to be here. We really are in a situation where we really like to have the interaction with the patients. This is one of the core elements which I will describe in our values later on. But before I come, I will actually give you some background to this phase here and why a Dane are sitting here in the US. So I actually came from the academic industry. I was in the university. I actually moved over to the US in 85, where I was postdoc on a children's hospital and worked there in endocrinology, went back to the university again, where I was part of teaching MDs, also to find out how to learn about physiology and endocrinology. And then I went out to my first, what I call industrial experience. I went into Novo Nordisk and stayed there for 12 years, where I had my managerial career and really were working on what we call the classical endocrinology from this company. In 99, I went out to the biotechnology and I started a company and we were extremely successful, and it basically got divested in 2000. I was then president of a pharmaceutical division for 2 years. And then I went back to Denmark. It was actually in the US. And then I went back to Denmark and I started a new company. And after 3-4 years, they went public, and I decided I wanted to try something else in my life. And I actually think it was the biggest and best experience in my life. Why is this relevant? Because it's basically the background how Ascendis Pharma got started. Because after 12 months, I realized I wanted to do something that was extremely meaningful for the patients rest in my life. And one of the most difficult thing you can do as a person that really want to benefit patient in a more broadly perspective, because I'm not like an MD like Aimee, because I never finished my MD education. So I were in a position saying I want to do something again with pharmaceuticals. It sounds really simple to go out and get product developed out to the patient, but it's actually extremely complicated process where a lot of managing can go wrong. But we were so lucky at Ascendis that we had the opportunity to work with the TransCon technology, which basic is the technology platform that is the fundament for all the product opportunity we have developed at Ascendis Pharma. We focused on endocrinology, rare disease endocrinology, and the first product opportunity we took up was TransCon growth hormone, and we took it from the idea stage into the market, and it came out in the market in 21 here in US, and it's really providing for first time in 30 years, the first time you have a once weekly somatropin product out in the US market. So there was really what we call a breakthrough first-in-class product opportunity. The second one we took up was actual TransCon PTH. We did that in 2015. We saw the huge unmet medical need there were in this era. This is one of our fundamentals. The other thing we saw that when a patient was well treated, it basically often saw extremely great clinical data when they were on infusion pump using one of the short-acting PTHs. It could either be Forteo, it could be Natpar, it could be other short-acting PTHs. And it has inspired us. Can we mimic this profile that really benefit the patient with an insulin-like treatment regime? One single subcutaneous injection every day, and then you will have the same profile. That was how we got inspired in 2015, and that was how we have taken the entire development. We are now in 23, 8 years after, and we really fighting as much every day to get this out to the patient here in the US and Europe as fast as possible. The third endocrinology product is a product that also in the area of growth disorder is a TransCon CNP. So that was how we started the company, with a strong fundament, how really to bring product out to the patients. So if I take our missions, and this is something we take extremely serious. Our mission is not just something we talk about, it's something we try to live up every day. And it's basically built on 3 cornerstones: patient, science, and passion. And this is how we basically are developing, how we operating. When we need to take tough decisions, we use these 3 fundamentals. And you can see them more described here. We want to make a meaningful improvement in patient life. And we think about that every day. How can we help patients? How can we do the optimal for the patients? The other key element we are driven by science and data. We are a company that always want to be sure we understand most on any scientific development, each single product opportunities, so we basically can have the patient focus we want to have. How can we help you as a patient if we not really are in depth knowledge about every physiology, every scientific perspective of both the disease, how we can get target engagement, how we can make the optimal product to you. The last thing, which are one of our key elements, is the passion. You cannot work on Ascendis if you're not willing to start 6 o'clock in the morning and often work to 10 o'clock in the evening. That was what we did this morning here, because we're working so hard on the CRL to be sure we can get this issue solved as fast as possible. And if you don't have this passion, if you don't want to cancel the vacation time here during the summer, because we're working on this here during the summer, you cannot be an Ascendis. And this is something we really talk to all the employees. I'm taking these three elements up because when we have any kind of decision we need to take as a company, we look at it and saying is, how can we improve patient life? If we have decision which scientific way to do in a product development, we go back and focus on the data, the science, and take that as the way we want to develop our product. So the transcontinental technology, as I said before, is the fundament for us. And it's so unique made that what we can do is that we could take an old product, the product that you basic has been used, some in infusion pump, some have used it in twice a day, 3 times a day, or once a day for TEO. So TransCon PTAs is built on a well-known product opportunity, a product that has been out in the market for 20 years, where a lot of you have experience to it for TEO. We basically have PTAs 134. We combined it in the TransCon technology with the TransCon linker, together with a carrier system, which are polymer that protect this molecule. So you can take it and inject it in a subcutaneous tissue. It will be transported into the blood compartment, and inside the blood compartment, it basically delivers a product over 3 or 4 days. And when you give it every day, you basically get a complete flat curve inside the blood compartment, which you can titrate up and down. So you can see the technology, the way we produce it, it's not a new molecule, it's a PTH 134. We are building in a chemical synthesis, the peptide. We are not dependent on anything else. And we therefore feel that how we develop it was one of the most solid, secured way always to be in a situation we always can provide the necessary product to all of you when we are in the situation we will be out in the market. If you look at Ascendis Pharma, yes, we are extremely present here in the US. Because here we basically have built a part of our organization. Headquarters is still in Copenhagen. We have our clinical development also in Germany. We have all research happening in basic in Germany, Heidelberg. We are running our commercial European organization out of Munich, where all our commercial organization is in Princeton. We are in Greater China, we are in Japan. We want to be where the patients are. This is our mission. We are not looking and saying this is a large pharmaceutical market, this is a small pharmaceutical market. We are saying we will be there our patients are. And this is how we're building up our global presence. The focus of areas we have today is what I've described before about how we build up our endocrinology rare disease. It's the cornerstone of the company. We also believed that we can be in a position we can utilizing the TransCon technology outside rare disease endocrinology. And this is where we are in position that we have oncology as one of our other therapeutic area, where we really are now moving into the more late stage development, and we're also working in the area of ophthalmology. But no doubt our key focus, the key way where we spend 80 to 90% of all resources in Ascendis Pharma is on endocrinology rare diseases. And we are not stopping there just with growth hormone deficiency, hypopara, or achondroplasia. We really are investing in new product opportunity so we can continue to be the leading player in rare disease endocrinology. It is a short introduction to Ascendis Pharma. It gives you the perspective of what we really want to achieve. We want to be a company trusted, respected, with a strong patient focus here and everywhere in the world where there's patient we can serve our product to solve some unmet medical need. And Aimee, will you take over from here?
Thank you, Yen. So we've switched seats, and I will be driving the slides now for just a few closing slides. So, and I'm, as mentioned before, Aimee Shu. I'm an endocrinologist. I work in our Palo Alto office here at Ascendis Pharma, and I've been here 5.5 years ago. I came straight from the clinic and still do maintain a small practice. So a few slides here, I'd like to bring maybe some of the topics that that have been on your mind, some of your mind, and try to start a discussion there. And we're open to questions, of course, later. You may want to know, how did we, Ascendis Pharma, choose hypoparathyroidism? You heard earlier from Yen, of course, that he has a background in endocrinology. And the real reason is, of course, we saw the potential to make a meaningful difference here with our technology. We knew we wanted to help patients, and what you heard from Yen's story is that we have a technology that is able to give drugs in a sustained way. And this is exactly what hormones need. So within endocrinology, hormones are made in different ways from our different organs. However, they're usually pretty short-lived. They have what we call a short half-life. And so if you're missing those hormones and your glands can't make them, to have it delivered can be a therapeutic challenge. And so it is very helpful if one has a way to deliver the hormone in a longer acting way so that it mimics how it is made in the normal body when the glands are intact. That is exactly what our company is able to do, what our laboratory scientists have been able to figure out. They cracked that nut. So in the past, our approach has been to identify where we think we can make a difference with what we know how to do, where patients may still be feeling there could be improvements, and to try to bring forward a drug that is safe, effective, well tolerated, and convenient. And it is our belief that it should be meeting all of those. Otherwise, right, there isn't any reason to be working so hard to make that. And as mentioned before, we have been in the TransCon PTH hypoparathyroidism space for the last 8 years. We've made some great progress and have partnered with people like you in this community to make good progress. And we felt that this is exactly one place where we know when the parathyroid glands are intact, parathyroid hormone is secreted throughout the entire day. And it's a pretty flat or tonic secretion all throughout the day. Every hormone's different, but parathyroid hormone is that way, right? So if one had their parathyroid glands, it would just be parathyroid hormone 24 hours, 7 days a week. And it fluctuates a little bit, but really not by much. And we knew in our library of, our magic bag of therapeutic tricks that we could deliver parathyroid hormone, which usually has a very short half-life when it is made. It only lasts for 3 minutes when it's made in the body. But we had a way to deliver it so that it was as if to mimic it that it was continuously being made. And that is, we thought, let's try it out. We had heard, it was 8 years ago, one of our founders was sitting in a scientific meeting and heard about hypoparathyroidism and heard about the the community were still looking for ways to feel better, ways to live your best life. And we thought, this is maybe a way we can apply what we know how to do and try our best to help bring something forward. You see at the bottom of this slide, once again, also, thank you. These are the quote cards that you have helped, lend your voice and photographs to. So thank you. And this is how we have understood what your life is like. So I think many of you may have a question on how our program is. This development program has lasted, as mentioned, 8 years. And we were expecting some big news this year, and still hopefully we're expecting good news soon. But we have, as you know, received what's called a complete response letter, and that is sometimes abbreviated CRL, and you heard Yen mention that earlier, from the FDA. And indicates that the FDA's review cycle for our application to get a marketing approval for TransCon PTH is not ready for approval. Doesn't mean it won't ever be ready, but they were not ready to meet the original stated date, which was in April of this year. A complete response also means, and it is called that because it does mean that FDA has looked at everything, the many, many pages of data we have sent to them, and have identified where they would like us to make some improvements on. The second bullet on this slide is here, where I will emphasize the silver lining to this situation is that it is clear the FDA had no concerns about our clinical data. So the data that we collected from our clinical trials, some of you have been in those clinical trials, they have felt, they understood, they felt good about that. They did not ask for any new clinical trials. They did not stop the ongoing trials, right? We still have 2 clinical trials, late phase clinical trials that continue ongoing in the United States and others, and in other countries as well too. So we do know, you may ask, then what is it? If it's not the safety and efficacy of the drug, what do we understand is the issue? So FDA has asked us to come forward and more clearly outline our manufacturing control process and strategy. I know this particular community certainly has your antenna up about anything to do with manufacturing. We are, I can let you know that this is distinct from what you have seen most recently with PTH 1 to 84, as far as I understand. This is different. They wanted us to be very clear in how we intend to do a very good job ensuring that what we bring to market is good and safe. And we share the FDA's commitment to doing a very good job doing what's best for patients, and we will work with them in a collaborative way to ensure they understand how we do decide to have good control over our manufacturing process. I will also highlight the 4th bullet here that we do have an expanded access program in the United States, and that continues to enroll eligible patients. That has been open for the past few months. It is the first time we at Ascendis have done something like this, and this was in recognition and in response to many voices that we heard from the community of folks who wanted to try TransCon PTH, knowing that treatment options have been limited and not everyone was able to enroll in the clinical trials in time. This is where we brought forward the expanded access program. We did have a rocky start in the beginning. I know that we had another group helping us and maybe some messages may have gotten lost. We are now in control of the communication ourselves. And so we have the information, the medical information email here. So you can point your doctors in this direction if it is something that you want to find more information about and what it is all about. FDA has made it clear to us that this program also continues as it was designed. And finally, this is a segue into the next slide. We work diligently here on the Ascendis Pharma side to continue the process with FDA. So as mentioned before, we want to do what's best, and we are working in good partnership with FDA to get back on track. So this next slide is, as you might wonder, so what is getting back on track mean, and what are the steps that you would need to do, right? So this is what I can share with you. This is the process we expect to follow. It is clearly outlined in FDA guidance, and they remind us along the way as well too. And between every triangle here, there is time, right? It takes time to prepare ourselves from one triangle to the next triangle, and we do it with as efficiently as we can and as completely and thoroughly as well as we can. So I'll go from left to right. After receiving a complete response letter, as we did, where it was outlined what parts we needed to improve on the next time around, this is what we are going to do from left to right. So we are preparing information and in getting ready to have another collaborative discussion with FDA. And in this case, it's called a Type A meeting. And the Type A meeting is the most important high priority meeting for FDA. They name them in alphabetical order, A, B, C. And so Type A means they're going to take it seriously. We take it seriously. And we, in fact, hope to meet with them soon and in person once we make a request. So we're working on making the request, getting our information together, trying to answer what they have asked for us to do. Once FDA receives our request, so now I'm moving to the second triangle, they will schedule that meeting, the Type A meeting. And we know now, just recently after this, as we're climbing out of the COVID pandemic, some of the government folks are going back into the office, and we may be able to also go back to FDA. This is what we used to do before the pandemic, is to meet in person. So we will have that meeting scheduled. After that schedule, it will take some time. FDA will think over what we have discussed and what we have submitted to them. It's usually paperwork, and make available official written meeting minutes to us so that we are all on the same page. This is what was stated. This is what the two sides have agreed to work on. Then the ball comes back to Ascendis here in the fourth triangle. We work to put together all the rest of what documentation information that the FDA agency may ask us, put it together in a nice package and send it to them. Then the ball goes back over to FDA in the fifth triangle. They look at it, they decide how long might we need to take to look through all of this information. And here's when we would let you know what our answer is. And they always try to stick to that calendar, but of course things can change, right? And there's, at least you can see here, there are two ways we can go forward. They can say, oh, I think what you're giving us is a relatively small basket of information. We may be able to look at all of this in 2 months. There's also a 6-month pathway. So at that point, they will look at it and make that decision. And then at the end of that review cycle, they will make a decision on what they on that data. To put it into context, a typical review period takes 12 months. And for us, we had priority review, so we had a 9-month review the first time. So the good news is that this next review, this resubmission, is a shorter timeline. And we expect to work diligently and efficiently, as mentioned, to get through there. So in closing, my final slide is that we wish to let you know, the community know, we try our best to recognize your needs and your interests, and to be very clear to you where we are in the process. We certainly were sad about the delay, and trying as much as we can, as you hear, to get back. We're not, you are not alone. We're doing this with you. We're supporting you with a group of, there's almost 800 of us working here at Ascendis now. When I first started 5.5 years ago, it was just over 100 at our different sites, and now we're 800 and still growing. We were really guided by our science. Many of us are scientists by training and have big hearts, of course, and to be involved in wanting to make people's lives better. And we are really grateful for the ongoing partnership that we have had with you, the hypopara community. So thank you in your ongoing collaboration with us, the trust that you have given us, and we really work hard with you on behalf of you to achieve some extraordinary results for people living with hypoparathyroidism. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Shu. Always so wonderful to have you and Yen on here. And we did open up the chat for everybody. If you want to put any questions in there, they're happy to answer any questions. And the one thing I also want to add about this team is the personable part. Like, this team cares so much about all of us out here. So while they have the science, they also have the passion that goes behind it. So let me go ahead and ask this first question. Is there any way to find out if there is a doctor in my region participating in EAP?
Shall I take that
Yeah.
one? Yes. So clinicaltrials.gov is a website hosted by the government, right? And if you type, you can search for all sorts of things. I think the easiest way might be Transcon PTH. And then you will find the different trials. And then on that, there will be a list of physicians who are already have a patient in it. So what's the benefit for having a doctor who's already in it is because they've already jumped through the hoops and filled out the paperwork and know how to receive, know how to receive the drug um, have demonstrated their interest and willingness, right? So that's one way, if it happens to be that you live in an area that there's another doctor who's already doing it. The other way then is to try to find or see if your doctor would be interested, and that would be to use that email address we had to go find out more information.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And then why did you pick PTH 1 to 34 over the complete chain of PTH 1 to 84?
Did I take that in? I believe we did it out from multiple reasons. One of the elements was the patient experience. We was highly inspired by a physician from NIH that had done multiple studies where they have taken first what we call a single administration a day compared to giving the administration twice a day, and clearly saw a huge benefit by doing that. And then the continue what I would call the evolution of developing a more optimal product, but taking the twice daily injection and then compared with an continuous exposure that happened by taking the same compound into an infusion pumps. And when we compared the data that was generated in the comparison between twice daily injection to continuous exposure, we believe that we saw an profile that we believe that will restore most or nearly all benefit to the patient by having a continuous exposure of PTH. It was clearly when there was an looking not only on biochemical parameter like serum calcium, 24-hour urinary calcium, bone markers, and other element that basic got normalized when they had the continuous exposure. So one key element was the clinical experience. The other one is the scientific literature, where there has not been any scientific publication that clearly can show a differentiation in biological activity between the 134 compared to 184, meaning that all biological activities are inherent in the first 34 amino acids. And then we come to something called manufacturability. And 134 is a compound that is from a pharmaceutical production, has so many positive, you can say, properties compared to 184. Forteo has been in the market for more than 20 years. That is multiple manufacturing plants, never have been in shortage because the manufacturability is really high. Some of us had the experience to work with 184, and we know it was inherent with many manufacturabilities because the molecule itself is a very difficult molecule to produce. I think there was the three key reasons: the patient experience, the scientific evidence that all activity was in 134, and to be sure that we had and supply chains that basically were extremely robust, never would be disrupted by manufacturability.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you, Becky and Aimee, for those two questions. We have Domingo. He says, thank you. And how long does it take TransCon PTH to be available to patients once it's actually FDA approved?
It will be very, very, very short time. Last time after we got approval from Skytrofa, it took us a few weeks before we basically had it as a commercial product. What we're doing is that we basically are what we call it labeling it by risk, we packaging and risk, because we believe that FDA will not change it in the last 4 or 5 weeks. It takes about 4 or 5 weeks to make a product ready from when we start labeling, packet, and secondary packing. But what we often do, trying to do that at risk, so we're ready as soon as we have the approval, then we can start to, a few weeks after, distribute it to the different places where it will be dispensed from. So all that supply chain has already been established, contract have been signed, so we ready as soon as we get the approval.
Good. All right. And then Kim says, thank you for the information. When can we expect clinical trials for the pediatric population?
I think that is a great question, because we are dedicated to develop this compound also to the pediatric part of it. This is our commitment to be patient-focused. We currently are in a situation we need to understand how we can align with FDA to ensure we can secure what we call the segment we're now addressing. As soon as we have done that, we will take all our effort, and Aimee, she's just want to get this pediatric trial, but we just need to be quite sure we're doing in such a manner that we sure we're learning from FDA to ensure that we also, as soon as we have the right data, can come out and really get it into the market. We are dedicated to do it in the pediatric. We dedicated to not only US, we are in an approval process in Europe now. We actually expect the approval of our EU launch end of this year, beginning next year. So we really are in a position where we are moving into different geographic regions. We also have finalized a phase 3 trial in Japan, extremely successful. Aimee can tell about the results, which are really, really mirror what we have seen in our other trial. And we are dedicated also to go to a filing as fast as possible in this geographic region. One of the things that some way has been a puzzle for me, the element of our strategy we have in our CRL has not really been raised anyway from the European side. It's mainly a dedicated US issue. So we hope at least we can launch at the same time in US as we will do it in Europe.
Very good. And then I think you kind of answered this in the last, but I wanted to read it out for Norma. Will you be waiting for FDA approval before you consider applying to Health Canada?
We are in a situation where we are basically going to Copenhagen next week. One of the part of this discussion is what do we do in the countries where we basically has not gone directly for an approval. And one of these key countries is Canada. And we need to find out how exactly we can get out to the patient in Canada as fast as possible.
Okay, let's see here. There was asked a question about the slides, and I think if we get the slides, we'll post them on our website. I don't know if you guys are putting those, or if those are free access or not the slides from today.
Yeah,
We can
I
just,
think, yeah, Melinda will take that and she will come back about the slides.
okay, very good. And then Domingo asked, is there any way you can get TransCon PTH through EAP if you have not had PTH therapy before?
Aimee?
So you're right, Domingo, that at the moment, or maybe you know this, maybe you don't. So I can say that when we first designed the EAP, it was really to meet the requests and needs of folks who knew that their access to PTH 1 to 84 was diminishing, and those who couldn't even get on the special use program. So in that sense, we did one of the inclusion criteria, you could say, for the EAP was to have been previously treated with parathyroid hormone. I will say that the expanded access program does build in some flexibility. There are human beings reading, of course, and who of the requests and working with the physicians. So it is, I can say there may be some times where case by case could be discussed, and I will say there is some flexibility into what exposure to parathyroid hormone treatment may have been in the past, right? So there are some people who were on for a month or two in the past and may be able to, you don't have to be on it now to get onto the expanded access program. And so there's
Okay.
some flexibility. We do have to, work through our own criteria, but we are willing to be creative with the physician.
Okay, so the recommendation would be still to go to the email address that you said and at least try to begin the process for whoever would need it. Okay.
Yes. And we are thinking about ways to make the expanded access program broaden it even more so that there isn't this requirement to have been previously treated with parathyroid hormone, because I think now with the timelines that we have now, we also feel an obligation and a responsibility to make it more broadly available for those who are interested. So we will work with FDA to see if there's a way we can do that.
Okay, very good. And Aimee, I think your question was, Aimee Steinhardt, was about the same. I think we answered it with that. And then Becky says, I've been on the pump with Natpara PTH 184 for 7 years, total of on 14 years. Can you tell us somehow that has been on, some of us that have been on the pump with 184 and completely stable labs, urine and cognitive, would compare to being on TransCon PTH? Did you get all that? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
got
did.
it.
This is my everyday talk, right? My everyday
Yeah.
data that I get. So I could only speculate here because in our clinical trials, the criteria were written so that the subjects coming in, the participants coming in, were not on parathyroid hormone anymore the day before, right? So there was a period where they would have been off, and then they came into the trial. So I don't have exact, like yesterday you were on, and then the next day you're, so in this case, not para pump by pump, and then the next day you're on TransCon PTH. And so I don't have real data from our clinical trials to tell you that. But as you have heard, TransCon PTH was designed to work like a pump, and having hands-on experience myself with many patients who had previously been on a pump, and seeing how these patients have done in the clinical trials, right, and looking in aggregate at the patients in the clinical trials, I would say that the expectation should be that that's how we designed it and that's what we'd hoped for. The expectations should be similar because they are both the pump and the way TransCon PTH deliver parathyroid hormone is that it's delivering it in this basal way throughout the day, in the way that could, make sure your kidneys getting it, your brain, if it needs it, is getting it, your bones and your intestines are getting the active vitamin D it should. I can also share from the expanded access program, right there, we do have some experience with patients switching over from other PTH therapies over, and it's been overwhelmingly positive so far. It's a handful of patients, but we've heard things like life-changing, really good, right? That we had some who are on taking multiple doses of other PTH, and even setting, I said to the doctor, okay, so your patient's taking PTH 3 times a day, calcium, 2 grams, calcitriol 1 microgram. And he said, no, Aimee. He said, no, my patient is taking PTH Q8 hours, meaning every 8 hours. So he said, it's very exact. She sets her timer overnight. So she wakes up at night to take her PTH, right? She can't just choose any 3 times a day. She has to do it every 8 hours. Otherwise it doesn't work. I said, oh, okay. And when she switched over, she said, wow, now I can sleep through the night. And it's life-changing. I've got my life back. So, in answer to your question about should I expect what I've gotten from the pump to be similar to what I would get with TransCon PTH, my speculative answer, but I think it's an educated guess, should be yes.
I think one of the key elements specific from the diabetes area, we used to have the insulin pump. And at least from that group, there is always a huge worry about the chance that either during sleep or anything that you disconnect yourself to the pump or anything. There is still a lot of work in filling the pump. There's a lot of worried about that. So I think what we wanted to achieve the best of 2 worlds. Get exactly mimic the physiological PTH concentration you see with a pump system, but not have all the worried about the inconvenience by preparing the pump, the worries that the pump is falling off, what is happening that during my night, do it then crash, or what is happening, and all this element. And I think that was why we designed it as an insulin-like treatment regime, a single daily injection. And we already have in our development a once-weekly product, because what we've seen now is that we see some patients getting more stable on the doses. And if a patient, we accept that in the initial phase where there's a lot of titration, where you basically are optimized it to the optimal dose, then it will be hard to do that with a once-weekly product, because just the time to move up and down is too long, and the responsiveness is that. But if there is a patient that basically will be on a stable dose for about 3 months, we believe that it will be a good option if the patient feeling much more convinced by having a once-weekly treatment. And I think this is some of the way we want to continue. How can we optimize the patient's benefit and make the treatment burden less? And that is what we can do potentially for this patient group. Aimee, I think last time you said you believe half of the patients now we have in our open label extension starting to be stable, and it could be perhaps the optimal candidate for a once-weekly product.
Right. Let's see, Norma says, since the half-life of TransCon PTH is so long, is there a concern of the drug building up in the body?
I think how it got designed with the half-life was that when you take a steady state, what do I mean by steady state? This is when you have, for example, after 1 week, have come to a steady state situation where the daily intake is exactly the same as the amount that's getting eliminated of the body. So basically, you can say you have a bucket where you take something in and then you take something out, and it's basically stable, the amount of material that is in the bucket. It takes about 1 week to achieve that. And when you have that steady state concentration, its basic is that the intake is the same as the outtake. What I believe the long half-life is providing is 2 extremely important. It makes the curve extremely stable, like an infusion pump. But the other part, it also gives you flexibility if you, for example, you don't need to take exactly the administration on exactly the same minute, but hour in a 24 hours cycle. Because this is why we have a window, because I know in day-to-day life, everyone is busy, everyone have some element that disturb them sometime. So it's really hard to inject it exactly at the same time every day. And I think by having this long half-life, you also have that if you miss it for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, or 5 hours, and worst case, miss it for 1 day, you're still well covered by PTH. And I think that is one of the key benefits you have with the long half-life.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? You can throw them in the chat really quickly. I think we got through all of them. And we will put on our social sites and back on the website the link to be able to contact about the EAP site for everybody out there, because it seems like there might, if you go on clinicaltrials.org, it doesn't seem to be showing what they're looking for based on one of the questions, but we have the email that you can email into.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. I know that conversation just came through about a week ago, so it may be that we're still doing our part to put the names on clinicaltrials.org, but the decision has been made to do so with the permission of the participating physicians. So it's probably in process, and it's so hot off the press that it hasn't been enacted yet.
Right, yeah.
But it will get there. Yes.
There's some thank yous coming through for your being dedicated to our hypopara community. We thank you guys so much. And as I said earlier, I mean, I will say that the passion you guys have for this community is just pretty amazing. And we thank you for not taking your vacation sometimes to be able to help us, as Jen said in the beginning. So I wanted to just give you the last word, anything that you would like to share in closing with the community.
So Melinda just corrected me. I said the wrong website, clinicaltrials.gov, G-O-V. But it still may not be up there. So I'll have to double check myself, but it should be .gov, not .com, as I said. And my last words are, thank you for, being interested, and thank you for sticking with us and your understanding and continued partnership with us. And I feel very confident we will get there. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And you heard we're working very diligently because we know there are folks counting on us and waiting.
I also would like to thank you a lot. We want to be patient focused, but the only way we can be patient focused is hear the voice from you. Because when you give us feedback, we know much better what we should focus on. We know much better how you're feeling. We know much better how we can have a positive dialogue. So being active together with us is basically the best way we really can do the best for you. And this is why I believe the dialogue interaction is really what we aim for in a positive, constructive manner. Sometimes we're not perfect. We're trying to do the best we can do, but we're still human beings. But one thing, as Aimee said, we dedicated to get this product as fast as possible out to you. And even it will take our vacation and other things, we will get it out.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody that's online with us this evening. And we'll talk to you next week on our next webinar. Thank you, Dr. Xu, and thank you, Yen, for being on today. Have a good night.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.